We're back in Atlanta for part 2, and what's becoming clearer with every minute is that laughter isn't just about jokes, it's about survival. When you sit down with people like Finesse and Heather McMahan, you start to recognize that comedy is a coping mechanism, not just a career. These aren't just funny people, they're truth tellers, and the truths they share on stage, behind the mic, and in front of a live audience aren't just entertainment. They're lessons we all need to hear. Because when you strip away the laughs, what you're left with is raw life, and that's where the real growth begins. Your pain has power. It's not something to be ashamed of or shoved under the rug. Every scar you carry tells a story, and those stories are the foundation of your strength. Think about it. Most comedians don't come from perfect childhoods. They come from hardship, dysfunction, grief, and chaos, and yet they turn that pain into art, into relief, into a way of reaching people. That's a lesson for all of us. You don't have to be on stage to turn your pain into something meaningful. You just have to stop letting it control you and start using it as fuel. One of the strongest things you can do in this life is to be vulnerable. I'm not talking about oversharing or playing the victim. I'm talking about owning your truth without apology. We live in a world that rewards pretending. People wear masks so well, they forget what their real face looks like. But when you're real, when you drop the performance and speak from the heart, that's when you connect, that's when people see you. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's honesty with muscle behind it. A lot of folks think that if someone's laughing, they must be okay. But that's not always true. You can laugh and still be healing. You can make others smile while your own heart's breaking. Humor doesn't mean wholeness, and we've got to stop assuming that the loudest voice in the room is the most secure. Some people use comedy to cope, some use it to distract, but every now and then someone uses it to finally tell the truth in a way people will hear. Don't underestimate the strength it takes to be funny when life isn't. The truth isn't always easy to hear, but it's necessary. If something in your life isn't working, stop blaming the world and start looking in the mirror. Change doesn't come until you admit the role you've played in your own struggle. That's not about guilt, it's about responsibility. The truth might sting, but it's the only thing that can set you free. You can't grow in denial. Growth lives in uncomfortable conversations, honest reflection, and sometimes a good hard wake-up call. It's easy to confuse movement with progress. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're balanced. Just because people are clapping doesn't mean you're living in peace. You might be working, performing, succeeding, and still feeling empty inside. If your peace only exists in applause, then you're not really at peace. Real peace comes when you're living in alignment with who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. And that means checking your motives, setting boundaries, and getting honest about whether your lifestyle is serving your soul. At the end of the day, life isn't something that happens to you. It's something you participate in. Every day, you are either building the life you want or making excuses for the one you've got. And the people you surround yourself with, whether they're comedians, colleagues, or family, will either challenge you to grow or keep you stuck. Get with people who won't just laugh at your jokes, but call out your lies. Get with people who see you, hear you, and won't let you settle for surface-level living, because your life is too important for autopilot. Show up, speak up, and don't just survive. Live like you mean it. Vulnerability is often misunderstood in today's world. People see it as weakness, as if admitting you're hurting or confused is a sign of failure. But in truth, vulnerability takes strength that most people can't summon. It means showing up without guarantees. It means letting someone see you when you're not polished, not perfect, not put together. It's scary, it's risky, but it's also real. And in a world obsessed with image and perception, real is rare. Being vulnerable doesn't make you fragile. It makes you authentic, and authenticity is the foundation for every meaningful relationship and every breakthrough moment in life. When someone decides to let their guard down, it creates space for connection. That's what makes conversations powerful, not when we're performing, but when we're present. You can talk all day, post all night, but if it's all a curated version of you, no one ever gets to really know who you are. That includes you. You can get so used to pretending everything's fine that you start believing the lie yourself. Vulnerability breaks that pattern. It says, I'm going to risk being seen because hiding isn't working anymore. And that one shift can open up everything: healing, love, understanding, growth. Some of the strongest people are the ones you least expect. They may not be loud or flashy, they might not dominate the room, but they are honest, and honesty takes guts. It's easy to play a role. It's easy to smile and nod and stay silent. What's hard is standing in front of someone and telling the truth about your life, saying, "This hurt me," or "I'm not okay right now." That kind of courage transforms people. Not just the one speaking, but the one listening too, because vulnerability is contagious. When one person opens up, it gives others permission to do the same. We live in a culture that worships strength, but misunderstands what it looks like. Strength isn't suppressing emotions or pretending nothing touches you. That's denial. Real strength is feeling deeply, owning your story, and still choosing to move forward. It's saying, I've been broken, but I'm not bitter. I'm bruised, but I'm still here. Vulnerability gives you power over your own narrative. Instead of being defined by what's happened to you, you become the one telling the story, and when you're the one telling it, you decide what it means. There's a myth that being vulnerable opens you up to being hurt. The truth is, you're already open to being hurt. Life does that no matter how careful you are. But vulnerability is how you turn pain into purpose. It's how you find people who see you, not the mask, not the role, but you. And those are the people who will stand by you when life gets hard, because they're not just there for the highlight reel, they're there for the real. And you don't get that kind of loyalty without first being willing to be seen. People often try to protect themselves by staying guarded, but the more walls you build, the lonelier it gets inside. You might feel safe, but you also feel stuck. You might avoid pain, but you also block love. Vulnerability is the key that unlocks your emotional freedom. It's the bridge between who you are and who you want to be, and while it won't always feel comfortable, it will always be necessary. Because nothing great ever grows in hiding. Growth requires exposure, it requires light, and vulnerability is the light that helps you bloom. So if you've been holding back, keeping quiet, or hiding pieces of yourself, ask why. Ask who told you it wasn't safe to be real, then start proving them wrong. Little by little, word by word, moment by moment, let people see you, not for validation, but for connection, because someone out there is waiting to hear the truth that only you can speak. And they won't get it unless you're brave enough to show up as the real you. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength this world desperately needs. Your story matters, even if no one claps. In a world obsessed with attention, applause, and recognition, it's easy to believe that your worth is tied to how many people notice or approve of you. But the truth is, validation doesn't make your story real. Living it does. Too many people are walking around silencing themselves because they think their experiences aren't big enough, dramatic enough, or interesting enough to matter. But your life doesn't have to trend to be meaningful. Just because something isn't loud doesn't mean it lacks value. Quiet stories often carry the deepest truths. When we start tying our identity to outside approval, we stop being authors of our own lives. We become performers, always waiting for someone else to clap before we believe we did something right. But what if the most powerful parts of your journey aren't meant to be seen by a crowd? What if your healing, your resilience, your daily effort is the standing ovation you never get, but always deserved? Your story's significance isn't found in how many people witness it, it's in how it shapes you. And sometimes the most important audience is the person you become. You may not be in the spotlight. You may not get recognition for the nights you stayed strong, the choices you made to break a cycle, or the battles you fought that no one knew about. But those moments count, they matter, and they change lives, especially your own. If you spend your life waiting for applause to feel accomplished, you'll always be chasing something fleeting. The loudest claps fade. But the quiet pride of knowing you stayed true to yourself, that stays with you, that builds character, and it fuels purpose. There's a certain kind of freedom that comes when you stop living for reaction. When you realize your story doesn't need a stage, you stop performing and start living, and living is messy, it's beautiful, it's private and public, silent and shouted, joyful and devastating, but above all, it's yours. You don't need permission to speak, you don't need an audience to be valid. All you need is the courage to honor your own truth, even when no one's watching, even when no one claps, especially then. Sometimes people won't understand your journey because they weren't meant to walk it, and that's okay. The world doesn't have to celebrate your every step for you to be proud of it. Learn to clap for yourself. Learn to appreciate the moments of growth that came when you could have crumbled. Your story may not make headlines, but it can still change lives, starting with your own. There's someone out there who needs to hear it, but first, you need to believe it's worth telling, and maybe the people who clap the loudest don't always see the full picture. Maybe they only know the version of you that's convenient or comfortable for them, but the real you, the one that's been through quiet battles, private heartbreaks, and unseen victories, that version deserves recognition, even if it only comes from within. The depth of your story isn't measured by popularity. It's measured by honesty, by growth, and by the way you kept going even when no one noticed. So if you're wondering whether your voice matters, whether your life is enough, whether your story is worth telling, the answer is yes. You may never get a standing ovation, you may never go viral, but you can still live a life that means something, and that starts with owning your story without waiting for applause, because the most important story you'll ever tell is the one you believe about yourself. And when you choose to believe it matters, that's when everything starts to change. You can laugh and still be healing. People often assume that if someone is smiling, cracking jokes, or lighting up a room, they must be okay. But laughter can be misleading. It can be a mask, a shield, or a way to make pain more bearable. Sometimes people use humor not because they're healed, but because they're surviving. It's easier to make others laugh than to explain your sadness. It's easier to wear joy on your face than to reveal the weight sitting on your chest. And yet, both emotions can coexist. You can be healing and still have moments of lightness, moments where you laugh not because everything is okay, but because you're giving yourself permission to feel something other than hurt. Healing isn't linear, and it doesn't always look like stillness and solemn reflection. For some, healing comes with music, movement, conversation, and comedy. It comes in waves, and sometimes laughter is part of those waves. Laughter doesn't cancel out your pain. It doesn't mean the trauma is gone or the sadness has disappeared. But it does mean that for 1 second your heart found a reason to feel lighter, and that second matters, it counts. You don't have to be solemn to be sincere. You don't have to cry all the time to prove that you're working through something. Healing can include happiness too. People who have experienced deep pain often become the funniest people in the room, not because they've left their pain behind, but because they've had to find ways to survive it. Humor becomes a bridge, it connects them to others, it gives them a sense of control, it creates space where they can exist without drowning in the heaviness of their own story, and just because they're good at making others laugh doesn't mean they're not struggling. It just means they've found a way to keep breathing through the ache. It's important to stop judging people's healing based on how they appear. Just because someone looks strong, confident, or carefree doesn't mean they're not carrying something difficult. And the opposite is also true. Someone who cries often, who appears broken, isn't necessarily behind in their healing. Everyone's process looks different. Some people heal by talking, some by listening, some by laughing, and some by simply getting through the day without falling apart. None of these methods are better than the others. They're all valid. When you allow yourself to laugh while healing, you're giving your spirit a break. You're acknowledging that you are more than what hurt you, that you're allowed to enjoy a moment, even if everything isn't perfect, that you can hold sadness in one hand and joy in the other. Life is not meant to be lived in emotional extremes. It's a blend, a series of moments where we hold conflicting feelings and still move forward. Laughter, in this sense, isn't denial, it's resilience. There will always be people who think you have to be serious to be sincere, that unless you're openly hurting, you're not healing, but that's not how it works. Healing doesn't require you to constantly bleed in public. It doesn't ask you to prove your pain. It asks you to show up for yourself in whatever way you can. If that includes finding humor in chaos or laughing in between therapy sessions, then that's part of your truth, and it's just as valid as anything else. So don't feel guilty for laughing while you're still healing. Don't let anyone tell you that your smile is fake just because you're still carrying wounds. You are allowed to feel joy, to laugh loudly, to make jokes, and still be on your way to recovery. Healing isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to yourself. And sometimes laughter is how you find your way back. The truth will set you free, but first it might piss you off. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's reality. Most of us crave truth when it comforts us, when it confirms what we already believe, when it paints us as the hero. But real truth doesn't always show up looking like a warm hug. Sometimes it shows up as a mirror, reflecting the parts of ourselves we've worked so hard to ignore. And when that happens, our first reaction isn't gratitude, it's resistance. We feel attacked, we feel exposed, we feel offended, but that discomfort, that sting, it's the beginning of freedom. Truth has a way of shaking the foundation we've built our lives on. It questions our stories, our habits, our excuses. It calls out our contradictions, and that's why it's so hard to face. It challenges the version of ourselves we've become comfortable with. Maybe the truth is that we've been avoiding responsibility. Maybe it's that we've been blaming others for choices we made. Or maybe it's that we've been settling, playing small, or pretending we're okay when we're not. Either way, truth doesn't knock, it breaks in. And what it leaves behind is clarity, even if it arrives as chaos. There is something strangely powerful about getting angry at the truth. That anger is a signal. It means something touched a nerve, and instead of shutting it down, you've got to lean into it. Ask why, ask what part of you felt threatened, because on the other side of that initial frustration is often a deeper understanding of who you are and what needs to change. Growth rarely begins with peace. It starts with discomfort, irritation, and sometimes outright fury. But if you can sit with that and not run from it, you open the door to transformation. We don't grow by being coddled. We grow by being challenged. The truth doesn't cater to your ego. It invites your soul to evolve, and that's why people often reject it at first. It demands accountability, it demands honesty, it demands action, and none of those are easy. But easy doesn't change your life, easy keeps you stuck. The truth is often hard, but it's also liberating, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and that clarity is what helps you stop living in circles and start moving forward with purpose. A lot of people stay in denial not because they don't know the truth, but because they're not ready to live in alignment with it. They know the relationship is toxic. They know they're in the wrong career. They know they're not treating themselves well, But truth requires change, and change requires courage. So instead, they stay in the comfort of what's familiar, even if it hurts, but truth will keep knocking. It will keep showing up in anxiety, in frustration, in late night thoughts, until you stop avoiding it and start listening. When you finally accept the truth, it's not always a dramatic moment. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's subtle, but it shifts something inside you. You begin to move differently, speak differently, set boundaries you used to ignore, show up for yourself in ways you never did before. That's the power of truth. It doesn't just change how you see your life. It changes how you live it. And once you're living in truth, you realize how heavy the lie was. You feel lighter, more honest, more whole. So yes, the truth might piss you off. It might hurt your pride. It might challenge everything you thought was true. But let it do its work, because buried underneath that anger is clarity, and clarity is the beginning of freedom. You don't need to fear the truth, you need to face it, because once you do, you stop being a prisoner to the past and become the author of what comes next. That's not just liberation, that's real power. Don't confuse escape with peace. Walking away from something doesn't always mean you've found clarity. Sometimes it just means you've had enough for now, but the noise you were running from, it can follow you. Because if you don't address what's happening inside, your outside world can change 100 times and you'll still feel stuck. Real peace isn't just about changing your environment or removing yourself from chaos. It's about making peace with what's going on inside of you, so no matter where you go, you're not constantly battling yourself. It's easy to mistake silence for serenity. Maybe you left the relationship, the job, the argument, but are you still carrying the resentment? Are you still having conversations in your head with people who aren't even in the room? That's not peace. That's unfinished business. Escape gives temporary relief, but peace brings lasting resolution. If you keep running from what hurts, you never really heal. You just relocate the pain. It shows up in new ways through different people in unexpected moments. There's a difference between avoiding and resolving. Avoiding feels like a quick fix. It gives the illusion of control. You shut a door, walk away, and for a moment it feels like freedom. But unresolved wounds don't stay quiet for long. They show up in your sleep, in your triggers, in your reactions. True peace takes work. It asks you to slow down and look at the parts of yourself you'd rather skip past. It asks you to feel what you've been numbing, to forgive what you've been holding, to release what you've been replaying. Some people confuse detachment with healing. They think if they stop caring, they've moved on. But real peace isn't numbness. It's clarity. It's being able to look at your past and not feel controlled by it. It's hearing that name or visiting that place and not spiraling. Peace is steady. It's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about knowing it happened and still choosing to move forward. Escape keeps you in survival mode. Peace invites you to live. You can escape a person, a job, a city, but you can't escape yourself. If your thoughts are loud, your regrets unresolved, or yourself worth shaken, no new location will quiet that. You'll just carry your chaos in a different bag. That's why some people keep leaving situations and still find themselves in the same emotional space. Until you face it, you can't free yourself from it. The only way out is through. Peace doesn't rush you. It doesn't pressure you to be okay. It gives you room to breathe, to feel, to forgive, and to grow. It's not always instant. Sometimes peace is messy. It looks like hard conversations, crying in silence, forgiving someone who's not sorry, or letting go without closure. But when you choose peace over escape, you choose transformation over delay, you choose long-term healing over temporary quiet. So the next time you feel the urge to disappear, to cut something off, to run without reflection, ask yourself if it's truly peace you're chasing or just a pause button, because you deserve more than a break from the pain. You deserve freedom from it, and that doesn't come from escape. It comes from honesty, healing, and the courage to face what hurts until it no longer controls you. That's what real peace is. Surrounding yourself with people who laugh at your jokes feels good. It validates you, makes you feel liked, even admired. It's easy to collect people who agree with everything you say, who nod along, who keep the peace by never challenging you. But surface-level harmony can't take the place of genuine connection. When all you have around you are people who only feed your ego, you lose something critical: accountability, because the truth is, real relationships aren't built on constant comfort, they're built on truth even when it's hard to hear. There's something dangerous about being surrounded only by those who flatter you. At first it feels like loyalty, but eventually it becomes enabling. The people who never question you when you're slipping, who avoid conflict at all costs, who let you spiral quietly because they don't want to upset you. They're not protecting you. They're allowing you to live in the illusion that you're always right, always okay, always in control. And that illusion can destroy you. You need people who aren't afraid to hold up a mirror, not just a smile. Real friends, real partners, real community. They don't just accept your version of the story. They challenge it when it doesn't align with your values. They see when your words don't match your actions. They notice when you're justifying bad behavior, blaming everyone else, or avoiding growth. And they love you enough to say something. That kind of love isn't loud or performative. It's consistent. It's honest. It's rooted in the belief that you are capable of more, even when you're falling short. These people might make you uncomfortable at times. They'll ask you questions you don't want to answer. They'll call out inconsistencies. They'll point out when you're lying, to others or to yourself. And your first instinct might be to push them away, to label them as harsh, negative, or unsupportive, but sit with that. Ask yourself why the truth stings. Ask yourself why disagreement feels like betrayal. Because often, it's not betrayal at all. It's proof of real investment in your growth. The people who challenge you are doing what the world won't. The world might cheer for your downfall. It might laugh at your failures or celebrate your struggles for entertainment. But someone who truly cares will stop you before you fall. They'll risk your anger to protect your integrity. They won't let you trade your values for validation. And in the long run, those are the people who help you become who you were meant to be, not just who you pretend to be when the spotlight is on. If you only surround yourself with people who laugh when you're wrong, you'll never grow. You'll stay stuck in the same patterns, repeating the same mistakes, surrounded by echoes instead of accountability. Growth takes friction. It takes honesty. It takes people who love you enough to tell you when you're out of line, and wise enough to do it without shame. That kind of feedback might not come wrapped in a compliment, but it's a gift just the same, and it's one you can't afford to reject if you want to evolve. So seek out people who challenge you, invite feedback. Don't just tolerate correction, value it. The ones who speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, are the ones who help you become stronger, clearer, and more grounded. They're the ones who want to see the best in you, not just the version of you that's easy to applaud. Surround yourself with those who not only laugh at your jokes, but call out your lies. That's not judgment. That's love in its most courageous form. We all have insecurities, but they don't have to run the show. Everyone, no matter how confident they may appear on the outside, carries something inside they struggle with. It could be fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being judged, or fear of failure. These fears can quietly dictate how we behave, the relationships we choose, the risks we avoid, and even the dreams we stop chasing. But just because they exist doesn't mean they get to control the decisions we make. Insecurity is a passenger on your journey. It doesn't have to be in the driver's seat. When insecurity starts driving, it whispers lies. It tells you not to speak up because you'll sound foolish. It convinces you to shrink because someone else might shine brighter. It warns you not to get too close to people because they'll leave once they see the real you. These thoughts feel so familiar, so automatic, that you start believing them as truth, but they aren't facts. They're fears, and fears only have as much power as you give them. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. You can feel nervous and still show up anyway. Insecurity thrives in comparison. The more you measure yourself against others, the more convinced you become that you're falling short. You see someone else's highlight reel and compare it to your behind the scenes struggles. You convince yourself they have it all figured out while you're still trying to hold it together. But the truth is, everyone is fighting a battle you can't see. Nobody's life is as perfect as it looks from the outside. The more energy you give to comparing, the less energy you have to become who you were meant to be. One of the most powerful things you can do is name your insecurity. Speak it out loud, bring it into the light, because what you keep in the dark has control over you, but what you face head on loses its grip. Say it without shame. Say, I'm afraid of failing. Say, I don't feel good enough. Then ask yourself, what would I do if that fear didn't exist? That question leads you to truth. That question reminds you that your dreams matter more than your doubt. Insecurities can't be cured by pretending they're not there. They're managed by courage. Courage doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you move forward in spite of the fear. Every time you choose to speak up when you'd rather stay quiet, every time you take a step even when you feel unqualified, you weaken insecurity's voice. Over time, it becomes background noise instead of a blaring alarm. That's how you reclaim power. That's how you build confidence, through action, not avoidance. Sometimes we expect to feel fully ready before we make bold moves. But the truth is, confidence often comes after the action, not before it. You prove to yourself, moment by moment, that you're capable, that you can handle discomfort, that you can show up imperfectly and still be worthy. And with each step, insecurity starts to lose its influence. It may never disappear completely, but it stops calling the shots. You stop living in fear and start living in truth. You are more than your insecurity. You are more than your doubt, more than your hesitation, more than the voice that tells you to stay small. That voice will speak, but you don't have to listen. You don't have to believe every fearful thought that crosses your mind. Let it be there if it must, but don't hand it the keys. This is your life, your story, and the only voice that should be directing it is your own, the one that believes in growth, in healing, in boldness, in purpose. Every day, you're either building the life you want or excusing the one you're in. That's not just a statement, it's a challenge. It asks you to take a hard look at your daily choices, your habits, your mindset, and your direction. Are you moving toward the life you say you want, or are you settling for what's familiar because it's easier? So many people say they want change, but then spend years justifying why they can't have it. They point to their circumstances, their past, their relationships, or their fears, but none of those excuses build the future. They only maintain the present. Change doesn't just happen. It's built brick by brick in the quiet moments. When you choose to show up even though it's uncomfortable, when you do the hard thing instead of the easy one, when you silence the voice that says stay safe, and listen to the one that whispers go further. Building the life you want means making decisions that align with your future, not your comfort zone. It means putting in effort when no one is watching and believing in results you can't yet see. That kind of life is created, not found. Excuses, on the other hand, are seductive. They offer relief from accountability. They make you feel justified in staying stuck. They say, it's not your fault, and while that may be true in some cases, it doesn't change the outcome. You can't grow if you constantly defend why you haven't, and you can't reach the next chapter if you keep rereading the last one. Every excuse is a brick in the wall between you and the life you were meant to live. Tear them down one by one, and you begin to see possibilities. The most dangerous part about excuses is how rational they sound. They come dressed as logic, wearing the voice of reason. They say you're too old, too tired, too busy, too broken. But what they're really saying is you're too afraid, and fear is normal, but fear isn't a stop sign. It's just a signal that something important is on the other side. If you let fear write your story, you'll end up with a life full of regrets and missed chances. If you push through it, you'll build a life that reflects your courage instead of your hesitation. No one builds a meaningful life by accident. It's not something you stumble into, it's something you work toward. That means discipline, consistency, and vision. It means saying no to distractions and yes to growth. It means doing things you don't feel like doing because the version of you that exists on the other side of effort is worth it. You don't get a second life. This is it. And the longer you wait for the perfect moment, the more moments you waste. You're not powerless. Even if you can't change everything at once, you can change one thing. Then another. Progress doesn't have to be massive to matter. It just has to be intentional. One better decision a day builds momentum. One honest conversation, one new boundary, one step outside your norm. These small wins add up. Before you know it, your life starts to look more like the one you imagined, and less like the one you settled for. So ask yourself every morning, am I building or am I excusing? Am I moving forward or am I justifying why I'm standing still? The answer might not always be easy to face, but it will always tell you where to go next. The life you want isn't on hold. It's waiting on you to decide that excuses aren't enough anymore. You are capable, and it's time to start proving it to yourself one day, one choice and one action at a time.